Okay, so I'm Cami Davis, and I was partnered with Champlain Orchards down in Shoreham, an apple orchard, but that's also diversified with other fruit. And what I felt like during my time at Champlain Orchards, I became really fascinated with the notion that every orchard had a very different felt quality, a particular presence, as if you could perceive its own genius loci. And I had been spending time prior to choosing Champlain Orchards in Shelburne orchards, in feral orchards, a few tended trees, and I live in a intentional community, and then went after, and also over the course of the year, looking at feral orchards and old orchard sites in the UK and the Pacific Northwest. So I had this sense of comparison of orchards. And of course, an orchard is not pristine wilderness. There is this quality of feeling tamed and tended in the relationship, the interaction of orchardists and pickers and cider production and families and farm market and so forth. But simultaneously, I also felt that Champlain Orchard felt particularly wild. And I think that was because of the sense of the deep time of the geology, of the steepness of the sloping of the hills towards Lake Champlain, and perhaps also a function of its geology, I'm not sure. We have Thor here to ask. The way in which the winds really go through those branches were particularly active all the time, it seemed. Here you see the painting Tenalock, which is Old Irish for a deep connection to the land, air, and water that allows one to literally hear the earth sing. And so for me, I was really responding in my work to that sense of wildness, even though an orchard is a human interactive working of the landscape. Also shown here, you'll see in the exhibit, is with a table and jars of Champlain Orchards Vermont Honeycrisp Ice Cider, which is very good if you have not tried it. Actually, it was part of my hoped-for sabbatical proposal was to sip my way through hard ciders and which I did a fair amount. Besides, it's really gorgeous. But I had this notion that the sipping of cider or the consuming of any product on a working landscape is a form of communion, a communion with place. So this painting is also a part of a larger project called the Orchard Project, which is a series of paintings and drawings and photos and objects and videos that are still in progress and venue to be determined, but I'm trying to work towards a solo exhibit. Here we have a piece, Lectio Divina, which is Latin for sacred reading and refers to the practice of reading sacred texts while contemplating the aspects of those texts that bring us into our own heart knowing. So I had this idea, let's see, where's the mouse on this? Is there a mouse? Sorry, I'm a Mac person. Oh, just like that. Oh, I see. Okay, sorry. And so for me, the Orchard Project in general asks the questions, what if we see earth, nature, the orchard, the tree as the sacred text, and how might we experience it? How might we live when we see it this way? And also, does our noticing make any difference to the orchard? And so I was kind of curious about that mutual engagement. I don't know if this is the video. Is that the video? No. I can't tell which one. One of these will be a real video, not just a video still. So while I was sitting amongst the trees, I don't know where the video is, but that's all right. I would sit in the orchard. I would occasionally go into the farm market and say, I'm that artist who's doing this project, but mostly I just would go into the orchard and draw or shoot video or take photographs, meditate, and I allowed myself a kind of intimacy amongst the branches and the blossoms, the fruit, the wind, again the wind, and the imagery of the videos has that same kind of intimacy. They're really close shots, they're in slow motion, And I'm sorry, I don't seem to have the way to shoot the video there. Because I was also thinking about the notion of the two old Greek notions of time, one being chronos, the chronological cycles, the ones that are marked by sun and moon, and also ion, that notion of unbounded or eternal time, something that cannot be reduced and measured, even though initially our time was measured on chronos. We seem to lose sometimes this sense of the eternal. Okay. Well, I apologize. I don't know where the video part is. So the other thing that was in conjunction with these, it's in diptych format, and there was also this idea of an unpredictability of these two, formally, the relationship of branch and blossom, and so, as these two videos, kind of the choreography that emerged was not as directed by me. It's two branches would come together when they would, a blossom and a branch, and what emerges from it. Video also feels really super disembodied, and so it's in conjunction with this shelf and cut branches, because I was really struck by the enormous piles of pruning, and that we could see that we could understand or see pruning as perhaps emblematic of right relationship with the working landscape, that there is this, it takes the pruning to get the kinds of fruit and apple cider and hard ciders that we enjoy, and but it also supports the health of the tree. And so that cut became, of the orchardist, almost became part of the sacred text, and that's why it was on this shelf in relation. And it also was full of the sensual, the actual lichen and branch, and just from on site. Simultaneously, while doing paintings and taking photos and being in place, doing video, the paintings are always happening in my studio. I take photographs and bring them into the studio. This is part of a series that I was calling transliteration, of course being the visual version of that idea of converting a text from one script to another, continuing that notion of what does our attentive noticing of apple, leaf, lichen, bird song, bee, blossom, the pruner's cut, if we see that as a visual and oral reading of a sacred text. So it also speaks to the process, because the process was to take photographs on site, to put them onto photocopy transparencies, to put those on light tables, and to re-photograph them. And that's part of what gives this strange striped quality, and also this sort of amped up light and contrast thing that's happening, because that also relates to something that I've worked with for a long time in my work, which is the Sanskrit notion of dristi. And so dristi refers to a soft gaze, but in that implies that while you're looking out to the phenomena of the world, the sensual and the senses, that's also informed by the multidimensional knowing that you have behind closed eyes. And can you bring those states of awareness into the working in the world? And so that starts edging into, in a way, magical realism. So there are about 30 of these photos that I've selected from about 100, and I'll probably show them on a grid or something. I'm not really sure, because this is work in progress that I'm sharing with you. I'm also working with a video. I'm just building an orchard with my son, cinematographer Ben Bach, and my other son, creative technologist Fletcher Bach, an interactive, responsive orchard that will be looking at ideas of this idea of that question, does my attentive awareness make any difference to the orchard? exploring what does the orchard think. But I bring it up here in this context because that notion of magical realism has, or an animate world, or the anima mundi, that there's sentience, intelligence, has impacted the work. You'll also see that there's a number of paintings, well, I don't know if you'll see here, in the show that's coming down the road. There are a number of paintings that are also use black, and I think that in many ways I was influenced by the work of Jennifer Wen Wei, who paints actually traditional Chinese ink onto these enormous plant installations. Still working on drawings, a wall of about 50 of these drawings based on the photographs from Champlain orchards. And with this particular question of what's the implication of our perception and what is the role of imagination to this human-nature relationship, with that particular eye to, as we have already entered this new era of the Anthropocene, where our footprint is the main evolutionary driver of Earth. So I guess the thing that I would like to finish with is I saw this project as as an invitation, as a kind of courtship to get to know a property, and but I have to say that mine always felt more like an affair. Or maybe even a fantasy, because so much of my work was studio-based. So, and by that I meant it was daily with me, but I was not always sensually grounded in place. And I was always incredibly mindful of that's very different from the long-lived, committed relationship of the orchardists, who have to live through the tending, the pruning, the seasons, the people, climate change, weather and climate change, and also economies, and how, the greater calling forth that has to the orchardists and the pickers and all of us who enjoy the fruit, and for which I have an amazing admiration. But what that did was it gave me the opportunity to realize that somehow I was seeing in my studio practice that I'm very interested in these ideas of perception's contribution, and perhaps a mutual perceptual experience with all, I would actually say all of existence, let alone the working landscape. Thank you.